Inheritance has three key advantages. First, it promotes software reuse. The derived class can reuse the data structures and functions defined in the base class. The derived class only needs to implement the data and the functions that are needed for the derived class. For example, this figure class defines the location of a graphical object and two get functions to get the x and y coordinates of this location. This rectangle class that inherits from the figure class and add two more pieces of data, the length and height, which are needed for the rectangle class, and two additional get functions to get the length and height. If you define another class that derives from figure, say circle, then you will not need this length and height. Instead, you will need to define the data and members that are needed for the circle class, say radius. This is another example. We have a binary expression class that defines two data members, the left operand and the right operand, and two get functions to get the left operand and the right operand. And the two derived classes, add and multiply, will not need to define these two get functions, we'll just inherit them. The second advantage is that the base class pointer or reference can point to or refer to an object of a derived class, but not vice versa. And this makes sense. So an employee pointer can point to a manager because a manager is also an employee. But a manager pointer cannot point to an employee object because an employee may not be a manager. Note that this inheritance needs to be public. For protected or private inheritance, the base class pointer or reference cannot point to or refer to an object of derived classes. And because of this advantage, we can use a container of base class pointers to point to both base class objects and derived class objects. For example, this is a base class pointer vector. All employees, this is a vector of base class pointers. And a pointer in this base class pointer vector can point to an employee object and can also point to a manager object. The third advantage is that we can reuse functions that operate on base class pointers or references. For example, this function takes two figure references and compare them. And here const means that this function will not make any changes to the two objects that f1 and f2 refer to. And this is the definition of this near origin function. And when we use this near origin function, the actual parameters can be two figure objects and can also be two rectangle objects because the rectangle class publicly inherits from the figure class. And can also be a figure object and a rectangle object. Now let's see how derived classes are implemented. An object of a derived class is implemented as an object of the base class with additional data appended at the end. That's why we can pass a reference or pointer to a rectangle object to a function that expects a reference or pointer to a figure object.